Remix. 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 Remix.
Yo, I'm out of practice. Welcome everybody to the Remix Morning Show. Right here on Black Liberation Media.
Yo,
Amber, Geechee, Jared, Lawrence is joining us for a special discussion. As we might as well just bring everybody up, as is Rasheen. Thank you. Welcome. Greetings to everyone this fine morning.
Hey, girl. What do you say? You're cute. I like your hair.
Thank you, girl. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
That's
We got to get to the important stuff first, Jared. Obviously.
I know. I this is not being run very smoothly on my part. I apologize. But our guests were here already, so I figure let's just welcome them all up. We'll do a proper introduction in a moment, but just if you all are cool with it, we'll just invite you to join us for this few minutes of welcome banter as we let folks file in. Please do like, share, subscribe, support the Patreon, blackliberationmedia.org. The links are in the show description. Find a way to support your favorite and what is the best morning show in world history. Maybe even universe. Maybe even, who knows? It's an expansive space. We don't know what's really, All right, Amber, go ahead.
I just have two very important questions. One, do y'all have y'all Valentine's Day plans together? Two, have y'all seen the videos of that black lady in Pakistan?
Oh, yeah, I did.
Let's start with the latter because, baby, she is tearing that country up.
Does somebody have a link? What's going on?
Right. Don't worry.
Why are they letting her talk so much, though? I'm curious about, is she comic relief for them as well?
She said, I'm Muslim. That's my business. It's against my religion to tell you my business. I said, that's right, girl.
Where's the dude that was supposed to marry her? Where he at?
Hold on. Geechee got to plug in his mic again. Amber got her mic plugged in. Geechee is in the Fly studio with an unplugged mic. I don't know what. I don't know.
Wait, what happened?
Okay,
but is that the link in the show description?
That's the link.
In the private chat? Hold on. All right, hold on. Let me see what's going on. Let me get caught up.
The lady is from New York. She went to Pakistan. She's married. She said she was going to Pakistan to marry a 19-year-old, and she done changed her last name already, even though she's not married to him. When she got there, his family said, hell no. They flee from their home. They leave. She stays and sits outside of their house, and this just becomes super popular by the news, and they just keep interviewing her. Okay, now play the video.
To the Factor Uncensored, trending right now, tonight, you may have seen this woman on your timeline. I did. Onijah Andrew Robinson. She's currently in Pakistan and gone viral for not only refusing to pack her bags and head back home, but also for standing on business about money from their government.
What's the problem? What's the reason?
Go home.
What do you need right now?
My feet is swollen. I need 5,000 a week.
You need 5,000 a week. Who's give you 5,000? There's all are poor people.
Y'all better figure it out.
There's all are poor people. They are not the rich people.
Ask the government.
A lot of people have questions about her and what she's going through in Pakistan. Factor digital producer Ajibola Budaran is here to help fill in the blanks.
Okay, you cut it out there.
What do we have?
So every time they interview her, the money goes up. So first it was 5,000 a week, then it was 12,000 a week, then it was 50,000 a week, then it was at 100,000 a week, and they're giving her the money. There are men in Pakistan showering her with gifts, like she ain't leaving. And her tour visa, like to visit, had expired. They didn't repay for her visa. Like she is like running amok in that country, and it's crazy.
Wait a minute. So I'm sorry. So she thought she had already arranged to meet this man and marry this
Get a
man.
tourism visa to go to Pakistan and marry a 19-year-old. She said they finna get married. Her name is Onaja Hamed. They finna go to Dubai and have their babies, and then they'll come back and fix the country.
And where does the money factor in? How does that factor in?
She said she need money to talk. So every time they asking her questions, she said, "That's my business. This is against my religion. I'm Muslim. It's against my religion to tell you my business. I need 100,000 a week." And I was like, "What is wrong with her?" And her husband that she's actually married to, and the son have come out and said that she has bipolar disorder and that she's just having a manic episode. But I said this is a long manic episode. Somebody needs to start like getting her some medical attention. Like at this point, she over there running amok in the people's country.
But she's also finding loopholes.
Oh yeah.
In her manic.
And I just feel like this is
actually
a lesson in abundance, because when someone asks you what you want, I need 5,000 or more. I need 12,000 or more. Like that's what she says, and I said I need to start asking for more. That's what the message is.
Well, that's the old lesson, right? If you need 5, don't ask for 2, ask for 10.
Exactly.
So this year in Black History, what we've learned is
abundance.
Find you a 19-year-old in Pakistan and set up your hustle at the local fast food spot. Okay.
Is my mic working?
Okay, so your Valentine's
That's
Day
better.
What are y'all doing?
It is. You talking?
Yeah, it's better. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I think these people here sabotaging my experience here. So
you are in Black Atlanta in a white space. So
yeah, I definitely am. I
Well,
got profile again this morning. I'm not supposed to be here, even though I got keys to come in this place. I'm not supposed to be here. So I'm sorry.
A black man with keys is still a robber.
Technically, I mean, obviously, damn.
How did this criminal get the keys
Bro,
to his own house?
That's what the lady asked. How did you get
it? The janitor.
Huh?
Or the janitor.
Yeah. Get in here. How are you here?
The janitor seems to get less harassment.
That's true.
It's true. You need some overalls, Geechee.
Yeah, that's what you should have done. You came in there with a nice button down, and they were like, "Criminal!"
I said,
"Wear your magical Negro outfit."
Forrest Whitaker taught us that. What was that movie where he said he commits his crimes in a 3-piece suit because they're never looking for a black man in a suit?
Oh Lord, which one is that?
I can't. Some movie back in the day. I can't remember. It was terrible. I didn't like the movie. Was it Ghost Dog? Maybe it was Ghost Dog. I don't know. One of those movies.
And listen, before we get to some serious stuff, I'm sorry, y'all. I'm sorry.
Oh no!
I saw this video, and I think
thought that's what this part was.
This is but we're supposed to be getting into some good
we
stuff.
Got more non-seriousness.
Yeah. This is.
I love not seriousness.
Fighting an 80-year-old. What?
She didn't though.
That lady ain't fucked me up.
That lady 84 years old. I heard she fucked you up and hit you with a 4-piece. I heard they called me to come get you. They say, "Yeah, I'm booming around here fighting." I said, "What?" I said, "Who's she fighting?" They said, "Whoever she is, the lady whooping her ass." How old is the lady? They said she 81.
No. Lady is 80-something.
She 80-something.
Listen.
And hit you with a 2-piece. That's crazy.
She ain't hit me with nothing. You know why? Because when I had these up, I was going to hit her. God said no.
So you was gonna hit an 80-something-year-old lady. You right? You right?
No.
I'm fucking tell on you.
God said no.
81-year lady. You admitted it.
Guess what I did with her?
What?
All I knew was this.
What?
You remember Bruce Lee?
Yeah, show me.
Look.
What?
She was swinging. Here I go.
81.
I can't hear her back. She's somebody's mother.
All right.
Geechee, that's how I know you old, because you find stuff like that funny. It's very slow humor. It took so long for me to laugh.
I can't hear her back. She see somebody's mother. I think I need to put that on the drop. So Jared got his drop, and I think we need to have that as a drop too. So
back to more important things. So have y'all solidified your Valentine's Day plans? Have you lined things up?
No, I don't. I protest yet another manufactured holiday to make me express my love when I do that every single day, all day, every day.
That's very light-skinned of you. Anyway.
Yeah. And I leaned into it. Right.
Somehow I ended up with 2 Valentine's Day dates. So I had to figure out how to finesse it.
So that was really what the question was for, just to set up. You could talk about your excess dates.
I want y'all to show y'all how skilled I am at this, because I was supposed to do Valentine's Day with one person on Friday. I finessed it into a Valentine's Day lunch, and then I'll be available for the other thing because it's gonna be like late around like 7 or 8.
You don't have some breakfast lineup and complete the whole daily meal situation?
I don't have breakfast lined up. Well, we're going to see Mufasa and going to get lunch. And then the other guys coming in town for the weekend. So I'll be doing stuff with them all weekend. So I have to spend at least a good chunk of time with the first person.
Yeah.
That's a good strategy. That sounds sound to me.
I appreciate that, Rasheen. Yeah.
Yeah. That sounds legit, like a legit strategy. Fortunately, I have the privilege of being femme, so I don't really have to think about Valentine's like that. I just have to wait for it to happen to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm leaning into that privilege of allowing Valentine's to come to me however it comes.
Got to.
I don't have
wow.
to think.
Last year, somebody just randomly sent me an edible arrangement. I still don't know who sent that.
Yeah.
I said, being fine and being me is just such a win.
I'm telling you. That's the strategy. Look at all of the men being extra quiet. Y'all scared?
And that's fine. I will say I did buy both of the people that I'm doing Valentine's Day stuff with.
That's nice. That's
I'm not trifling. I bought them a little gift.
No, I think that's legit. Like, express your love, right? I think that's good.
But I feel like when I hear you describe it as it just happens to you, I feel like there's no reciprocating gifts in that situation.
It is reciprocation, but there's things that I plan, but there's things that I don't plan. I plan family trips. I plan let's go on vacation. There are things like I'm not planning Mother's Day. You plan Mother's Day.
Exactly.
I see.
I'm not planning Valentine's. You plan Valentine's. I plan your birthday. I plan.
Okay.
You know what I mean? This is something that it should come around, and I should be like, "Oh, thank you."
Look at what happened.
Thank you for giving me all of this. I appreciate it. And then, of course, reciprocate. But I should not. I don't feel like I want to be the person who initiate Valentine's. You come to me, ask me to be your Valentine, and then do the Valentine's like behavior.
Yeah, you got to set the stage. If I let you think in the beginning you can do stuff like that, then you're gonna think that you don't have to like be obsessed with me 24/7. I need to.
Where is the wooing? I want to be wooed and courted.
Can you woo?
Like, if I'm not wooed and courted, it's like it's a lost art. People are just like, I like you, you like me. Like, woo me. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, maybe I don't like you. Like, let's see,
Or maybe I'd like you more later if you woo me.
Right. Take the time.
Right.
I feel like that's why Amber's strategy is good, because you have multiple folks on the bench that you see, okay, this and this, okay. And then
there's still room for one more, like Jackson Sullivan said. There's still room on my roster for one more.
It's a deep bench.
Yeah. There's the other one leaving on Sunday. I could do something Sunday night. I'm just saying, there's availability.
Yeah. I believe in ethical non-monogamy.
I do too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, one of them, the one I moved the date
works.
With for the lunch thing, he's poly, so he don't care. I just told him I need to move it. And he was like, yeah, that's fine. And I'm not available that evening. And he understood. I mean, I believe in just communicating with people with what you want.
Do you like the movie She's Gotta Have It? Sorry, y'all. We just gonna say this one last thing and y'all can you like
we should rewatch that. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
I like it. It's a good movie.
Yeah. I like a little bit less what they've done with the show. The episode
of the show.
It's more a modern day version of
it's a show.
Yeah, it's on Netflix. The thing that I don't like about it is because my friends will be like, is this how your life is? And I'll be like, no, actually, it's a lot more complicated, a lot more messy, a lot more to navigate.
Yeah. I enjoy watching other people's mess in non-monogamous relationships. I don't have time for it, so I never deal with it.
It seems like a lot of work.
It is.
What's a lot of work?
Multiple entanglements.
I mean, I don't think it's a lot of work when you pick people. If I don't like them, then it's gonna feel like work. But if I like them, it's not really work.
Okay. All right.
I got so many questions. We should go on though.
Lawrence hasn't said a word. His Valentine's plans must be spectacular.
Oh yeah, no. My partner, she's real low key. She just likes to hang out and like watch British crime shows. So we're just gonna do that and maybe.
That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about.
Literally all of them. Like, she has every streaming service, including BritBox, and I have the ability to watch some of the new stuff before it hits BritBox. So we watch, Sherwood, Death in Paradise, just like all of them.
I like her because you know what? People who know that the UK makes the best shows are keepers.
It's stunning how much better it is than American television.
Way better. So I read something that was talking about why it was better, and they said that the shows are better because they have less shows, so they put bigger budgets into them, and they only show so many in a season.
Yeah,
like
6 or 8 episode seasons. Yep.
No, it's just they're the original whites, so they have a leg up on Americans. They have that original, the foundational white talent.
It's like that British academic elitism. Like, one thing I realized is that you can tell people who make those shows read books, and you can tell people that make American shows watch a lot of TV. And so they'd be real formulaic in America, while in the UK they're influenced by actual books and like narrative structure, character building, world building. You can just tell. And a part of it is just like that British noblesse oblige, like, no, we actually believe that we're smart and we're going to work hard to show how smart we are. While in America, it's like, populist entertainment catered to the masses.
We don't need to be smart. We're American. Yeah, I get it. The original Office was better. I can at least co-sign that much. So
I've never seen The Office.
It is if you like dry, quirky humor, it's good for that.
Even with all the white people?
Even with all the white
especially
people.
Again, that's what I keep saying. I like my media segregated. There were no black characters. I love it. I love it. I don't have to worry about
one black character.
It is one that black dude.
I'm sorry. I was thinking the original British version.
Okay.
They give us Stanley in the US. But it was subdued enough that I didn't feel it was overly offensive. But yeah.
Someone in the chat asked if me and Rasheem are twin sisters or cousins, and actually we're just black.
That's it.
And that's how I like my humor up front. I can't do the dry quirky stuff. It takes too long for me to laugh.
All right, right on. Listen, good people, I don't know exactly. First of all, Lawrence, I continue to forget what is your exact title. Is it it's the director of
research at Leaders of
Beautiful Struggle. I do that for at least a decade plus now, so I apologize and welcome back. And really, I'm sorry we don't have the Ear Doctor's soundboard, but making a debut of sorts, not unknown to us in these areas, but maybe not so much here at the Remix yet. Hopefully, is not just Rasheem, but this is actually Dr. S. Rasheem, who, among many other things, is a scholar and activist and currently working with Baltimore Rising Project that we are going to discuss a little bit, this Baltimore Legacy Project, I should say, that we're going to discuss a little bit here this morning. And we will link to all of their work in the show description and hopefully have them back many more times. So to both of you, welcome back. Welcome for the first time. Thank you for joining us. And yeah, how would we all like to proceed this morning?
Rasheem, you go ahead and do your thing, and then I'll follow up after that.
Yeah.
And Rasheem, real quick, I'm sorry, because I've seen you around at Morgan, but because of my own liminal and marginal and disturbed experience in space, I'm always confused. It is, it's been wild, So sometimes, like, I remember I saw you one time walking into the building, and I get confused at context. I'm like, I know, but I'm like, in fact, a couple new faculty have showed up this year that I've known for a number of years, but not at Morgan. And I've seen them in the hallway and was like, where are we? What is happening? So, but you also do work at Morgan. So
a little bit of my background.
Yeah, where are you at Morgan? I'm kind of curious about that part first, and then everything else. Yeah.
So around the time that you saw me, I was in the School of Social Work. I was in the School of Social Work department as a lecturer.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yep. Currently, I am in the Women and Gender Studies department.
Okay, right on.
Really, it's the English department and Women and Gender Studies program. They have their own department.
With Professor Newsom Horst. Yep. Right
So
on. Okay.
Now. Yep.
Okay, very good.
What are you teaching?
Right now, I am teaching understanding feminist theory, and I also teach intro to feminism. Before that, when I was doing social work, I taught Black families, intro to social work, macro social work, and human behavior in social environments.
Do you enjoy intro classes more or the more intricate subjects, like the more like elective type classes?
I do not enjoy intro.
Yeah.
Well, here's some ways in which I find intro useful, because there's some things that are fundamental that I can incorporate in my syllabus and in my class that sometimes when I get to other students later on, there's fundamental things that are missing that I'm like, you should have gotten this. So in that way, I like the intro, because it's like, oh, I get to introduce you to this and give you some folks from the canon that are foundational. But I tend to like the theory classes, and I tend to like the macro classes and things that focus of like large populations and movements throughout history. Yeah, those, they just have the juicier conversations, the juicier discussion.
I agree. I was teaching a course around bail and like bail funds and the history of bail and stuff. So it's a very niche class, and people were talking about how I could change it to make it more of an intro class to get more people. And I was like, I don't want more people to be in the class. I think that you learn more from particular type of subjects versus teaching an intro to criminal justice or intro to something class. I'm not into it.
Right. No, totally. Yeah, because you find that you have to go back and fetch so much more when you teach an intro class, but you like, okay, y'all can't do the intro yet because you need pre-intro, or y'all can't talk about this theoretical concept yet because y'all didn't get the right foundational folks in the conversation initially. So
I think depending on the subject, it's going to be a lot of information already. Like if I'm talking about bail funds and the history of bail, that's already a lot of information.
Yeah. That's how it be. So I will talk about this Baltimore Legacy Project. So let me tell a little bit about my background. So I'm a social scientist, independent scholar, and I'm a researcher. A lot of my research focuses on marginalized population. Even more specifically, it's usually focuses on Black women or Black queer women, like in just different aspects of life. Wherever my research has been, all of the folks that I have engaged with have largely lived in Baltimore, and even more specifically, they've been in every pretty much different aspects of Baltimore life. The thing that comes up is y'all know, some of y'all are academics. So being in the academic space, you write these articles, they go behind a paywall. The only people who see them are people who subscribe to that journal or other scholars who are doing that work. So it doesn't make your information consumable to a wider audience. One of the things that's very important to me is to be able to do a bit of literary code switching, where I can still contribute to the academy in meaningful ways so that scholars are able to pick it up and learn from it. But also it's important to me that the people that I am talking about, that I am exploring, that they have access to the information as well. One of the things that I'm able to see, that we can all see, is that video is is one of the largest consumptions of information for people, right? So considering video valid source of knowledge, valid sources of information, I know I've learned stuff from movies. The thing that I feel like one of my strategies was to create this documentary. To tell the story of Baltimore. Now, let me say this about the entire project. It's called the Baltimore Legacy Project. The Baltimore Legacy Project is focused on unearthing like the historical and culture of Baltimore over a very long period of time. I believe that it's probably one of the largest collections of firsthand narratives from Baltimoreans, and it ranges in definitely in in age. So there are people who are talking about Baltimore in the 50s, Baltimore in the 60s, Baltimore in the 70s and the 80s. And the way that the whole Legacy Project is set up, it is about 7 to 9 different films. And each film focuses on something different. So there's Baltimore Black intellectual history, there's Baltimore institutions, there's Baltimore movement history, there's Baltimore legacy families. We have legacy families in this city, like the Murphys or the Mitchells. And then Baltimore's creative history. And then there's 2 that are kind of, that one is Beyond the Wire, that hasn't come out yet. And just talks about how Baltimore is not the wire. And then the one that is coming up right now that I'm promoting is Baltimore Still Rising. We are in the year of the 10th year anniversary of Baltimore uprising. And one of the things that sometimes I feel like we do is we don't look at history as instructive. It's one of the things that I want us to do more often is consider history as not just a reference point, but as a resource. We have uprisings, we have movements, and then they're gone, and then we don't know what came out of it. I don't want that to happen. I want us to, like, to me, Baltimore Still Rising is a love letter to Baltimore. It's also, let's have a family meeting and let's talk about what happened. So some of the questions that I feel like this film will answer are things like, what is movement lawyering? What are some of the biggest takeaways from the uprising? What are some of the policies that came out of it? What are some of the organizations that were able to propel their work to the next level? What modes of operating do we already have in the city that are part of the indigenous infrastructure for coalition building? We have models and strategies in terms of the way that the city moves that other people can actually learn from. And it's just really important to engage it as instructive. There's some questions that this documentary also asks. It asks questions around, or is it good to have a conversation around, like, what are the politics around oppressed people's right to push back? What are the politics around oppressed people's rights to have righteous indignation, right? Like, so those are some key aspects of it. There's about 20 different voices in it. It is the areas wherein it's diverse in that particular area on purpose, and the way that it is not diverse is that on purpose as well. It's not diversity for the sake of diversity. So, for example, it may be more racially homogeneous, but in terms of the people's background, their income, and their profession. So there are teachers, there are people who identify as activists, there are imams, there's Christian leaders, there's professors. So I'll share some of the names of the characters, if you will, that show up in the Baltimore Legacy Project. So Jamal Jones, who's the director of Baltimore Algebra Project, Ray Kelly, who's the executive director of Citizens Policing Project, Senator Antonio Hayes, Diane Bell McCoy, Nick Mosby.
Frostburg! Sorry.
Look at you representing. Diane Bell McCoy, Nick Mosby, former city council president, Jill Carter, former senator Charles Duggar, elder in the community, Melba Russell, who's a retired Baltimore police officer, Kiefer Mitchell, Kevin Daniels, who's a professor at Morgan State and also a bishop, Heber Brown, who's Black Church Food Security Network, Adam Jackson, who, of course, as you know, is the co-founder of Leaders of a Beautiful Struggle and now, I believe, assistant director at Loyola. Dorcas Gilmore of Baltimore Legal, Davon Love, Leaders of a Beautiful Struggle, Tanae Harris, Bloom Collective, Lawrence Grand Prix, who's Director of Public Policy at Leaders of a Beautiful Struggle, Catherine Pugh, Mama Jerry, and Imam Earl Alami, just to name a few of the names. Oh, I don't know if I mentioned Dr. Wimbush is also in it.
I was about to say.
So you have all of this, and Baba Nati of Everyone's Place.
Oh, word. Oh, right on, right on.
So you have this collective of information of people from these different vantage points of the uprising. And there are some key things that we could take away from it and use. Some of the more nuts and bolts of it that folks will want to know, that is April 24th. Of this year. So April 24th at 7 p.m. Write it down, save the date, mark it. I'm gonna share the link so that y'all can go get tickets, get multiple tickets, bring young people. It's gonna be not only the film screening, but also afterwards, there's gonna be a panel discussion with some of the folks that are in the film. So again, it is April 24th Yep. Thank you, sir.
And I'll put the link to the Eventbrite in the show description too. Yeah.
Thank you. April 24th, 7 p.m. at the Senator Theater. Again, it's from 7 to 9. We may end up going beyond 9 because there's the film aspect and then the screening. I'm sorry, the film screening, and then afterwards, of course, the conversation with folks on the panel. So that's it in a nutshell. I don't know if people in the chat have questions, but if so, I could go off and get busy in the chat.
So just quick, have questions, but one of them was rude, so we didn't ignore that one.
Oh
wow, I missed that. We got
somebody asking about,
well, maybe we should just
Black feminism only and then free everybody. And I wanted to cut them out, but we're gonna skip it. I did want to mention the Baltimore art thing you were talking about. I love the Baltimore Art Museum. I went there when they had the exhibit from the Black woman who uses like similar textures as Elizabeth Catlett. It was really, really good.
Mm-hmm. Baltimore is slept on, I feel like, a little bit too much in terms of its creativity. You have some of the most diversely creative people, and a lot of people are deeply artistic around multiple aspects. For example, I'm a visual artist. I have a few murals around the city. My most recent one is on Woodburn and York.
Can
on
you
the side
drop that in the chat too? Because I'm going there in a few months and I want to go find it. I love murals. And I definitely think the art scene is slept on there because I was living in DMV for a few years. So I used to go to the museum and just places randomly in Baltimore all the time. And they have a really great art scene. So I really appreciate that you're focusing on that as part of the documentary too.
Yep. It's definitely important. That I feel like there's so many aspects sometimes that come up where people will operate as if the source of it happened somewhere else, or don't acknowledge how some things were happening simultaneously in other parts. And one of the things I want to do is not only tell that story for the sake of telling those stories, but also to identify how some of this information is instructive for us now. People's response, for example, to Trump isn't the most racist president that we've ever had, right? We have ancestors who have done a whole lot more with a whole lot less, and they have blueprints for how they did it. Like, we should be further than we are. So I think that it's just important to highlight that. And I'll say this one last thing in terms of on the top of a topic of history. I frequently tell people that slavery, it was white people's history. How Black people overcame it is Black history. Like, they should own their history, and we need to own our history about how we got through, and not focus on the first this or the first that, because what that really tells me is, oh, y'all been racist this entire time, because that's not the first person that's qualified. But we need to, again, know the operations and the mechanics and the blueprint behind how we overcame, how we advanced. But we don't get that story. We just get, they the first to do this at this bank, or they're the first to open up this. And we need to know more about how, and that's what I hope that this documentary will do.
Now listen, that's called my boy. You know nothing about that.
So, Rashim, can y'all hear me? I feel like I can't hear myself.
Well, we can hear you.
Okay. So, could you
hold up? Who is this? Who is being spoken about right here? My bad, Geechee.
You the only light skin. Oh no, actually, Grand Prix is also.
Didn't Geechee tell you to stay out the chat, Jared?
Scottie Pippen. Scottie Pippen. I'm just. All right, my bad. Sorry, Geechee. Go ahead, man. That was messed up.
Well, you're not the only light skinned on here at the moment, so.
Well, it depends how you define these things. But anyway,
I mean, they could be cousins. Jared and Lawrence could definitely be cousins. First cousin.
Right?
Oh, wow. Wow, don't do that to Lawrence. Don't do that to Lawrence. He been there quiet and polite all morning. Don't take shots. Leave Lawrence alone. Go ahead. My bad. Go ahead.
Take up for your light skinned brother.
I mean, I am by saying
I was just wondering which Scottie Pippen Jr. or Senior, because that's either compliment or pack, depending on how you read it.
That's a good question.
Ooh,
that's fair.
All right, Geechee, go ahead, man. My bad.
You sure? You seen anything else in the cat?
Wow.
No. So, Rasheem, could you please go more into movement loitering? And I know that we're gonna get into it later, but I know when I was in Baltimore for a few years working with Ray, community control policing was a thing. So I would love to hear even some thoughts on that too. But movement loitering, what can you talk more about?
Movement lawyering. So one of the people who talks about that, it was lawyering. So one of the people who talks about that in the film is Dorcas Gilmore, who's very active during the uprising, and some of the things that that she's shared in general. I won't give all of her stuff away. About movement lawyering, what it means to be a movement lawyer is how you show up and support folks in movement space, providing legal aid, letting them know how to protest, how to engage with folks, and that sort of thing. So that's what she was. That's what I'm saying. Movement lawyering.
And there's a great movement lawyering program. I don't know if y'all heard of it, Law for Black Lives, that different law schools have their own clinics for. Because I actually was an advisor for a clinic for some students in Louisville a few years ago. It's a really great program, and they get students started early in movement lawyering. So like as long as the school's okay with the clinic, then they can start like in their 2L year and start doing movement lawyering.
Nice.
And Lawrence shook his head, so that means he know what I'm talking about. And I just want to say that I got the most reaction out of Lawrence than anybody else.
Well, yeah.
No, I would.
Being, we had helped lead some of the protests during the Baltimore uprising in 2015. So BALT was part of that. So that kind of got us into some of those Movement for Black Lives networks. So yeah, I know folks that work with Law for Black Lives, and mostly I'm nodding my head because a lot of the elders that we work with in debate came from the Pan African Studies Department at University of Louisville. And you said Louisville, not Louisville. So that let me know that you actually spent time in Louisville.
Yeah, I was down there for like almost a year. So, well, up there because I went up, but yeah.
The only question that I had, I don't know, Geechee, if you were finished. That's why I was hesitating. But the only other question that I had was, is the documentary, because my little pet peeve, having been an outsider working in Baltimore during that uprising, my pet peeve in the way it's recounted is a lot of the mystery and the false narratives around purges and all that kind of stuff that was still. Is any of that addressed in this? Any discussion of what actually happened versus narratives about what happened, and also narratives about what has happened since?
Yeah, there's definitely some focus on the misinformation of the media, of how they were characterizing things, whether that is accounts from people who were out of town at the time when it initially popped off because they were at a conference or whatever, and seeing it on the television and then coming into town and seeing like, oh, it's the CBS, or coming into town and some people that don't live in the city were like, oh my gosh, they really did a number on this city, and people who live in the cities like, actually this was boarded up before, like this is part of the conditions that's contributing to why there's all of this righteous indignation in the first place. So that's addressed. There's also, I'm trying to get this clip to make sure that it's included, because there's this part, there's a news clip where some members of the Crips and Bloods come on the news, or a news anchor, field anchor, approaches them, and they want to set the record straight because there's this narrative that was happening in the media that the Crips, the Bloods, and all of them were trying to get together to form some super gang against the police. And Yo was like, no, we trying to, stop the violence, and we coming together. Like today, we not just Crips and Bloods. Today we're coming together to work. And he's saying this on the news thing. So I'm trying to get that clip, but that's costly to get. So, but in terms of talking about the narrative and the misinformation of the news, that definitely comes up. Another topic that comes up is outsiders and how people from national movement space kind of did sort of a helicopter in. That whole section is basically just called "They Not Like Us," because they kind of.
That's what. I'm sorry. I thought that's what Geechee was talking about when I thought I heard him saying movement loitering.
Oh,
so that's where I thought he was going.
Got it.
So that's interesting that you ended up there anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely a conversation that happens, because one of the things that the film also highlights is that there are people will be like, ain't nobody doing nothing in Baltimore. That's so false. One of the things you see is that there's plenty of people doing stuff, and they stepped it up even more when the uprising happened. So the churches who are standing, the Christian churches who are standing arm in arm with FOI, who are standing arm in arm with teachers, who are standing arm in arm with organizational leaders, from, you know, whether they're from Morgan or Goucher or wherever have you, all standing together to, like, you don't have to come in and tell us how to protect our babies and how to show up. It's definitely a section where it talks about people dropping in using Al Sharpton model of like, let me come in and, you know, drop in and just say a few things. And I think one of the things that comes up that will generate a conversation about is the difference between when walking in movement is life and death and when walking in movement is a career strategy. Right. And I feel like there's a lot of people who are having a particular response to DEI right now because their movement was a business strategy. So this is really impacting their coins, because outside of DEI or what have you, if you're in movement space, if you're doing the work, there are people and organizations right now doing the work without a DEI platform, program, XYZ. If you're going to do the work, you're going to do the work. So that's one of the things that also comes up in it. Like, you see the difference between the people who like, this is what we do because we care about, love our city, love the youth, and the people who are like, this is how I get money.
I'm really glad you have a section there about the people coming in from the outside, because I've seen it happen in multiple different places. And I do think that needs to be, you know, shown too, because they are exploiting people. And for folks who have never dealt with like an uprising in their city, they don't know like what that looks like. And so even just showing, hey, this is the strategy, this is what it looks like when a Tamika Mallory or Al Sharpton come in, and this is what they finna ask you to do. And like, they need to know that ahead of time, because people really exploit folks in those moments. Because I've seen it here multiple times, and in Louisville. When I was in Louisville, that was crazy.
Oh yeah. Yeah, so it hits on quite a few topics. I'd love to come back and talk about it again if we have time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, we always have time. So this, and you're welcome to come back whenever. So in fact, Kamau has probably already sent me an email telling me to invite you to become a more routine host on the morning show. So I'll double check the email. And we'll follow up on that. But anytime, and then folks, please do. I already put the links in the show description for both the project and the April 24th event. So sign up, get your tickets, and be there in the spot.
Yeah. Please come out.
I have another question. Are you allowing folks to do showings after you do the premiere? Like, can different groups do showings?
Yep. After the premiere, folks can do screenings. They just need to send me an email, reach out to me, and I'll give them all the logistics about what that would look like. I would like it to be shown largely at Black institutions. I'm open to it being shown other places, but this is really instructive, is how I want it to move. Later, I'll just say that. Also, because it's part of a series, I want this particular film to get its time in the sun, so the screenings and all of that for it to happen, because it's going to April 24th of this year, 7 p.m. And so for the remainder of this year, I want it to get all of its time in the sun, because in February there's a whole nother, February 26th, there's a whole nother film.
Are you submitting to any film festivals or?
Yeah, my plan is to try to submit to the Maryland Film Festival. There's also apparently a Baltimore one that takes place in November and October. So we'll see how those go, the November one and the October one, fingers crossed. I will tell you, one of the freedoms, and sometimes there's plenty of challenges with trying to do this yourself, because I am self-funding it. So it's largely my credit cards and my bank account that's funding it. So there's the stresses of that, right? But the thing that is the freedom of that is I don't have, this ain't from some grant where a person can't say how they really feel on camera, or, oh, I gotta bleep this out because it's gonna make John Hopkins mad. You know what I'm saying? So in some of that, it gets, I'm grateful that it gets some of that.
Well, Memphis has a really big indie festival. For someone who asked when I said here, I'm in Memphis, Tennessee. So Memphis has a really big indie festival. You should consider submitting there. Okay. Someone also in the chat, it's called Baltimore Rise. It's the name of the film. Someone also asked, can they have more info about your murals, like where your murals are?
My murals are different places in the city, but what I could do is I have a art page called Art by Rashid. And you could look at my art page to see where the murals are.
We can make sure that's linked in the show description as well. Folks, yeah, definitely should follow up.
Yeah. Also, why'd you say the clip about the Crips doing the news thing was expensive? Like, you have to pay something to get the clip?
Yeah. So, and I won't get too deep into film law.
The copyright.
Let me just say real quick. That's the accurate link to my to see information on the Baltimore Legacy Project, because I put Baltimore Still Rising as the IG name, and that's not the IG name. That's the film name. The one that's on the screen right now is correct. Say it again. I'm sorry.
I said for the copyrights, so you got to pay for the copyrights.
Yeah. So for example, some are like, it's like per 15 seconds. It's like $200 per 15 seconds. Things like that. So it depends on how I get it. And then also it depends on if I plan on selling it or not. I don't really have intentions on selling Baltimore Still Rising or the Baltimore Legacy Project. I feel like it'll be something that I will either have, and then maybe when I get old, donate to some archival institution. So with that, I have a little bit more freedom. So I could, in some ways, because of fair use law, I could go about incorporating it, because I don't ever plan on, let's say, selling it to like Netflix or HBO or stuff like that. So it's possible that I'll be able to use it without paying it.
Some folks are asking how they can donate to your work. Do you have that on the Baltimore Legacy Project site?
I do have it there, and I could also share a link. Because how did I listen? The struggle is so real.
I don't understand.
Yeah, and because I'm the type of person, I also want to make something that's quality. Oh, that wasn't in that. That's the internal chat. Yeah, I want to make something that's quality. So I'm, reviewing edits, going back through, getting this right, constantly re-talking to people. It's film, but I am taking a very scientific method to my approach in terms of how the information is organized, in terms of raising the themes to the top, and also even identifying theoretical frameworks that help to explain what happened. So there's something called frustration aggression theory. There's also blocked opportunity theory. There's terms like crimogenic. There's all of these things that it's like, this is instructive. People like to say, why do people riot? Why do people protest? Why do people do X, Y, Z? There's science. There's ways for us to understand that. The real question is, Baltimore had all of the conditions that make it right for all of those things. So the real question is, why didn't this uprising happen sooner? Is the real question. Because it was really like it was a powder keg, and that just happened to be the thing that really set it off, which is also one of the reasons why one of the taglines for this film is beyond the uprising, a city's fight for justice. Because that's really what this film is about. It's not just about one person, but it's about the city's constant fight for justice. People talk about protests and riots, and they may say, oh, you're destroying the buildings in your own community, or why would you take this approach? Why would you do this? And there's things that explain one, why you do that, and two, there's people who are working on policy to improve conditions. They are working with children in after school programs to improve conditions. There are teachers in the classroom trying to improve. There are council members and senators. So it's not nobody sitting in this city watching things go down and not doing anything. We've been doing stuff the whole time, and then you just happen to create a condition that ignited our children, and our children came out, and they don't have the education or training or discipline that we do to not just come and bust you in the mouth. So you get what you get.
So I don't know. I think this might even pull Lawrence in, but so one of the things, I only been in Baltimore for 5 years, and I got to meet a lot of those people and work with a lot of those people that you name. And one thing that I really always appreciate about Leaders of a Beautiful Struggle is that y'all had the analysis, y'all had the radical black politics, but y'all engaged public policy in a way that I didn't see a lot of people have until after. I don't want to say until after y'all did it. Y'all made it more palatable. So I wonder if there's a not palatable, but more. I don't even know the word I'm looking for. But y'all made it important for people
accessible.
to engage. Yeah.
So let me. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, just really quick. So kind of what you were saying, challenging or engaging systematic issues through public policy or challenging the state. I hear people saying like programs challenge the state, but I'll be curious to hear what y'all think about the importance of engaging public policy as it relates to things like community control, police, and all these other things, and why y'all feel like the methods that y'all have been using have been well. Because I would say this, even in the spaces that I was in, like with no boundaries in place, I don't think that people quite understood what the work that y'all was doing at times. But now I feel like they definitely understand.
Grand Prix.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know if you want to take a break before we get to the stuff that I wanted to talk about, because it kind of gets to it. I think that'd be a good idea to take a quick break, but just to sort of tee it up a little bit.
We don't have, I mean, well, I if you want, I can say the break would be, welcome everybody back to the Remix Morning Show. Please like, share, subscribe, support the Patreon, blackliberationmedia.org, all the links in the show description, including the links to the Baltimore Legacy Project, Still Rising documentary, and more. So please avail yourselves. And welcome back to the Remix Morning Show.
Jared, can you also share the GoFundMe? She put it in the private chat, and some folks wanted to support that.
Oh, real quick, I also wanted to say
put
thank
that in
y'all
the show
for,
description.
Thank y'all for having me on.
No, of course.
You leaving?
I'll be in the background. I guess I could be in the background. Yeah, I'll stick around for a little bit.
Okay.
It's up to you. You're welcome to stay on camera, or or whatever. It's up to you. But yeah.
I'll hang out for a little bit. I'm gonna leave my girl Amber hanging.
Thank you, because it's so hard being the finest and the only one.
Well, somebody told me that this show is Amber and the Pips, and me and Jared. So.
I'm down with that. I have no problem with that.
You're just a natural star. I can't help it.
You are.
And as we all know, as a former drummer with the greatest funk band in Western Maryland from 1997 to 1999, of course, Mama's Biscuits, I'm accustomed to playing the background. I have no problem with that. We had two fire-starting front performing women fronting our band, one of whom wore her blowout afro often enough. So I'm accustomed to playing in the background and keeping a steady beat. You know what I'm saying? That's how we do it. You know what I mean? So.
I actually agree with Monty, with Amber and the Bluebells, because I am Southern, and I do think, that flows.
Okay. Hey, however you want to call it. I tell you what, before
actually take a real break, I can
let's
play my rap video I made for my birthday.
Send me the link and send me the link and in the interim, let's set Lawrence up. Let's go ahead and set it. We could take a break this way. Here we go. All right. Welcome back to the Remix Morning Show. Jared, Geechee, Amber, Lawrence Grand Prix of Leaders of a Beautiful Struggle. Dr. Rashim is in the building as well. Links in the show description for more. And here we go. So let me
just tee it up. For my 30th birthday, I saw this girl on TikTok. She was like, I got my friends to go to a studio. We rented some studio time, made a freestyle. So that's what me and my friends did for my birthday. It's a Black liberation song, and y'all gonna like it. Go ahead.
Just start off what they do, niggas.
Syndrome on the beat, so you know it's slap. It would take a giant like a lion to come and distract. The struggle's ongoing, we get victories again.
Thought I'd never touch a booth, then you niggas piss me off. So much BS being spewed, I refuse to let you off. The hook, the line, it's domination time. No more rulers in the kingdom, cause it's takeover time. The people wanna turn, liberation's at the door. It's knocking on beat, cause it's time we fix the score. Amir Carr taught us, claim no easy wins. The struggle's ongoing, we getting victories again. We want a world guided with a social justice lens. All power to the people, cause it's just us in the end. And I mean that shit.
You can do the Baltimore two-step to that.
Liberation, yeah, it's coming. We ain't playing, yeah, we want it. Liberation, yeah, it's coming. We ain't playing, yeah, we want it. All power to the people, cause it's just us in the air. Liberation, yeah, it's coming. All power to the people, cause it's just us in the air. We ain't playing, yeah, we want it. Never played about my people or the ways to get us free. So I'm principled and studied when it comes to strategy, not a pacifist. Yeah, I defend my peace, 10 toes down, hands steady and carefully. Can't be moved by organizers who don't move without a check. Had a lot of niggas wonder if I'll ever meet my match. Mouth smart, ass fat, mind quick on what I catch. It would take a giant like Goliath to come and distract. Talk shit with the best of them, now let me share some mess. Couldn't leave the booth without laying y'all to rest. You whack, ineffective, you can't get votes. Immoral, genocidal, and everybody knows the whole world thinks you stupid. You be like, so I love imperialism, I'll never let it go. Liberation, yeah,
that was a bar.
We ain't playing, yeah, we want it. Liberation, yeah, it's coming.
You're welcome.
We ain't playing,
Listen,
yeah,
somebody
we want it.
listen to the whole thing. All they heard was ass fat.
Cause it's just us in the air. Liberation, yeah, it's
Oh,
coming.
everybody heard.
Power to the people, cause it's just us in the air.
I just want to say that Monty said that y'all was gonna be hard on me and do me like Apollo. That shit is a banger, and none of y'all can resist it.
No, that was like
no, nobody's. Yeah, there's no. Who's trying to do you like the Apollo?
I'm
Nobody.
even scared. I'm not scared. I'm never afraid.
No, that was good. I feel like I like how you mixed in different aspects, like that Lauryn Hill. It reminded me of a line with Lauryn Hill where she say, "Even after all my logic and my theory, I add a motherfucker so you ignorant niggas hear me." So you have all of this liberation and and you like ass fat.
That's my best friend Jess. The second verse is her, and the first verse is me. And I want to drop in some, some Emil card talking point, throw a little sprinkle in there.
I like it.
Good work.
Hey, congratulations, Amber.
I'm not making no more songs. That's all I got. So sorry, y'all.
Well, you got to
go with that one banger.
Me and Jared sang the hook. Since we your bells.
There you go.
That was me singing the hook. I wrote everything except for Jess's verse. Within like 30 minutes, I just sat there and was writing. It's actually fun. I think going to a studio is a great creative outlet for people.
It is fun. Yeah, right on. When you hear, if any of you watch over the last couple of years ESPN, and you see those commercials where you hear the chant, something like "We ready," something like that. I'm one of those voices in there. My homeboy did that. I'm one of those voices in there.
Should we be getting an autograph, Jared? Next time
you should. You really should. You should be like, yeah, you know what I'm saying? You should be like, hold up, sign this ESPN blanket or something real quick.
You know what I'm saying? Sign this quick.
We should be getting his autograph because he was in Mama's Biscuits.
That's really what it is. But for real. That's really what it is.
Where's that?
Stop treating me like they did Babyface at the Grammys.
Where's that Jared be taking it too far loop? You got that? You got that looped up yet? He's a lefty. He'll be taking it too far. Where that loop at?
Anyway. Somebody in the chat said Mama's Biscuits and Amber Fusion.
Oh wow, yeah, that's terrible.
All right,
we should do that though. We should. When we have our reunion, we'll bring Amber out.
I feel like he can't never get his question answered about.
No, I mean, I'm about to leave too. I got to go places. Let's go. Let's get into it though. You want me to ask it again, Lawrence, in a short way?
Yeah.
So pretty much there's this idea that all of us are organizing in the streets and we're trying to engage or struggle against systematic issues. you guys focus on public policy as a means to challenging the state, and then obviously people have programs and they have other things. They have coalitions and things that they do, and I'm just curious to kind of hear some of your thoughts around engaging public policy as a important method, especially when you talk about community control and things of such.
Yeah, and I wanted to come on actually kind of as I would say loving, but in some ways a counter or an addendum to the conversation that was had earlier this week about the ballot initiative to return community control to Baltimore police. Because I think one thing that we started LBS realizing is people would go to City Hall, scream at City Hall, and they would be like, well, no, actually, that's the state government. And it's the importance of having precision on things like that I think made me want to come on. Because it is insane that Baltimore didn't have formal control over its police department since the 1860s or 70s. But many of our elders, when we started working on this issue 10 years ago, were like, yeah, that's crazy. But the real issue is like this state law, this law enforcement officers' bill of rights, these rules around hiring and firing and use of force policies, which actually are at a state level, and even with local control, still are at a state level. So I wanted to come on to make sure that there was clarity upon what local control means, but also use it as an example of something that we say a lot to everybody, which is that if we call ourselves a left progressive Pan-Africanist liberationist, we have to have precision. And I think that's one of the things that many people say we have and we take pride in, bringing to the space of social justice analysis precision about the actual dynamics at play. So when it comes to local control of police in Baltimore, which I think is a good example of local control of public safety in general, you have state laws that determine things like use of force policy, that determine things like the floor for accountability infrastructure, because we have these police unions, which we'll talk about more later, negotiating these really intense protections from being hired and fired. And the only solution to that is actually have state laws so they can't collectively bargain an unconstitutional, illegal practice by the state of Maryland. And that's still the case today for Baltimore City. So when you talk about returning local control, so we worked on things like the LEOBR, Law Enforcement Officers' Bill of Rights. Used to have these kangaroo courts where police who were disciplined by their police chief, because again, in this case, the boss is the police chief, the employee is the police officer, and it's a union labor dispute, which is important to understand. The unions, the FOP, were so powerful, even against their own chiefs, who were also cops. They would have these kangaroo courts where other cops would basically get to determine if someone got to get fired or not. And so we pushed police reforms in 2016 that made these kangaroo courts called trial boards public. We saw them and we said, no, this is ridiculous. We got to get rid of them. So in 2021, we actually passed state reform, which says that you have to have these police accountability boards that replace the trial boards that have civilians on them. So it's not just police policing police. And right now we actually have a bill in the state of Maryland called HB 3836, which will give independent investigatory power to these police accountability boards. And I know that's a mouthful, but that's like a core demand of the Black Power movement going back to the 50s. Because right now we have to take internal affairs word when they do a study on a police wrongdoing. We do not have independent, community accountable investigatory power to actually be able to have the community have someone to go to be able to see if internal affairs is telling the truth, someone people can trust and go to. And all of that completely independent of local control of BPD. That is state law. So there are fundamental realities of power that I think part of the innovation of LBS has been to say, like, yes, the city council would be good if they have some say, but we have one of the weakest city councils in the entire country. We have basically a mayoral dictatorship. And giving some power to the city council requires so much deeper analysis about how to work with the city council, the dynamics of Baltimore City Council and our basically mayoral dictatorship, that the emotional cathartic narrative of we went to the people and they voted and we fought the power and they came and they voted, fundamentally very little has changed with that vote. And that's not to say the vote wasn't important, but I think these are the sort of dynamics that have to be excavated for us to have a deeper understanding of not just community control in Baltimore, because not everybody lives in Baltimore, but you live in Maryland. And these laws affect the entire state of Maryland. Wherever you are in Maryland, you have a police accountability board that cannot hire its own lawyers and investigators. They have to take internal affairs as word. So this HB 836 would actually be really important. And I don't want like the narrative, the emotion, the catharsis of we voted and now they have to listen to obscure all the mundane kind of boring stuff which is actually completely essential, not just to some abstract notion of police accountability, but to one of the core objectives of the Black Power movement for decades, going back to the 50s, which is actual institutional engines accountable to community that can hold cops accountable. So I want to pause right there. I have a few other things I want to talk about, including stuff about the unions, but that's kind of like my first point.
Well, I just wanted to ask about, in terms of clarity, do you want to say any more, or should we play any of the remix from the other day? Is there anything specifically you wanted to that they said that you wanted to speak to specifically?
No, it's not really anything specific. It's the frame and the context and the general approach that we take, that the left often takes, which again is like.
So forgive me if I missed it already, and I'm asking you to repeat yourself, but I just want to make sure I'm clear, because when I went back and watched the show the other day, I thought I understood what Jackie and Ricky were saying, and then but I was left with, so I was just confused. Well, what are they not seeing? So could you just?
It's inherently confusing, which is part of why I wanted to come on.
All right. So okay.
BPD, the Baltimore Police Department, during the 1800s, there was like, after the Civil War, pro-segregationist Democrats believed that, Baltimore was a Republican stronghold, black population, things like that. And again, quote unquote, Lincoln Republicans. So they were like, oh, the Lincoln Republicans are suppressing the segregationist Democratic vote, and also like the Whigs and the Know Nothings and stuff like that. So they took formal control over the BPD, right? So it is but Baltimore funded it. Like the city of Baltimore always funded the BPD. The mayor of Baltimore always appointed the police chief of the BPD. So state control, while it feels insane, while it feels like a fundamental impediment to community control, was largely just a pro forma extension of this policy in the 19th century. So that's fundamentally the point I'm trying to get across, is that having this big celebration of returning local control in legal terms to BPD obscures the fact that we kind of always had local control, but we also always and continue to have a lot of things at the state level that are probably more important than formally who has control over the BPD on paper. But the reason I wanted to talk about it again is that it so neatly fits a narrative that the left likes to fit. Is that we went to the polls and we voted, and they didn't hear our voices, so we went back to the polls and we voted again, and then we finally have control of the BPD. Like that narrative, I believe, because it fits so neatly with leftist narratives of the system, whatever, you got to go to the people. We don't have to know the distinctions about the House bills and all the different legal statutes. You just got to go to the people and demand control. And when you get it, you win. And what I'm saying is that isn't really a win. It sets the frameworks for other more specific victories we have to talk about. But because the left sometimes, I believe, is more interested in narrative and catharsis than deep study of power, that the segment ended where it did without an analysis of any of these dynamics. That's the fundamental thing I felt I wanted to come on and correct.
I had a question, Lawrence. When you were talking about the bill in Maryland, is it the same thing as when other review boards are asking for subpoena power? Is it similar?
Well, it's subpoena power, but it's also having the ability even to hire someone to be able to do the investigations. So yeah, HB 836 would allow for, like, because you literally can't hire like counsel for the PABs because they're like, no, you have to take internal affairs' word for it. Mm-hmm. And that's part of why the CRB, the Civilian Review Board, was a paper tiger, was a toothless tiger, in the words of the article they shared. So the actual legislation that would fix that, again, goes beyond local control. It requires a change to state law to allow for people to actually hire independent investigatory entities that are accountable to the PABs and not the actual internal affairs department.
Interesting. Yeah, we have a state law passed here that doesn't allow for review boards anymore. So all the boards that were here in the state, they changed all the names to them. So we still have them, and they still have some type of subpoena power and some type of investigatory like access, but they don't have to use the internal affairs folks, like the lawyers and stuff. They are able to hire their own independent people. But that was like a new thing. And I think that even with that, the way the law was written, those boards, their decisions aren't like legal binding. So like they can do all that stuff and make statements or put out a report or something, but none of it's binding because of the state law. So I also kind of counter with is it really worth it? Because all these people on these boards are volunteer niggas doing volunteer work for some stuff that ain't gonna never come to fruition.
Yeah, and that's another thing that, just talking with Davon and working with folks on these issues, it's like as a left, there's a version of leftism that's like, well, who appoints people to the PAB, the Police Accountability Board? Who appoints people to the Administrative Charging Committee? If that's something, do we know? Do we have enough precision to know? But more than that, you can get appointed to that position and be a conduit of information for the community. Ray Kelly, who we've talked about, is on Police Accountability Board, right? So he is someone who's taken on that role, and I think it is something that I feel is pretty consistent in many leftist spaces where it's like, that's just, the power is just so polluting, it's so corrupting. Taking control of those institutions makes us accountable to those institutions versus, we just have to use the levers of power that are available to us, because sometimes we think, we just need to have a broad-based, class-based movement to be able to leverage power of the proletariat. But there's a specific incident I wanted to bring up, because I think it also gets to the second point I wanted to bring up, which is deeper analysis of local control of policing and politics in general requires us to deal with not just our so-called enemies, but our so-called friends, and sometimes evaluate who's who. So there's a specific incident relative to community control of police I wanted to bring up, but I think also really gets to something deep about sometimes the left is so abstract in this analysis of power, we miss the important stuff right in front of us. So one of the biggest advocates on this police accountability issue is Jill Carter. She's a former delegate and state senator from Northwest Baltimore. If you know anything about Northwest Baltimore City, it has a Black population, middle class, poor, but also a large Jewish population. So she is the representative in this district as a senator, and there's basically rumors she's going to step down. And the entity that replaces someone when they step down is the state central committee. So in a move to control who replaces this daughter of a civil rights legend, Walter Carter, in a predominantly Black part of Baltimore City, a crew funded by Howard Freeman, the former head of AIPAC, put together a slate of many tough on crime, many of them Orthodox Jewish folks, to take over the state central committee, to be able to replace Jill Carter with someone more amenable to that interest, a champion of social justice and daughter of Walter Carter, right?
Jill Carter organized. Just to clarify, the state central committee is the same as the Democratic Party in other places?
Yeah, this is an internal organ of the Democratic Party, but it is publicly elected for this purpose to, they do get out the vote, they do stuff like that, but really their main role is to replace people when they step down or have to step down if there's a scandal, if they die, but this is the 41st District, Northwest Baltimore City. Okay. So again, former head of AIPAC.
People who don't know what the central committee stuff is.
Yeah, and again, this is the sort of sometimes in the weeds, we call it inside baseball, mundane politics that the left it's not sexy for the left, but it's literally life or death for our people. So to kind of complete the story, former head of AIPAC funds a slate that includes his son, Alex Freeman, to take over the state central committee to replace a senator who is a champion on police reform, local control, police accountability boards, all that stuff, who is probably going to step down. But she, seeing this, produces a counter slate of Black people to try to push back and take control of the state central committee so we can control this organ, right? And again, that's Jill Carter talking to Dave on one of our episodes of In Search of Black Power.
Jill Carter is a light-skinned girl on the side?
Yes. That is former state senator Jill Carter. She has actually stepped down at this point.
Why did she step down?
Well, let me try to finish the story real quick.
Keep going.
But she stepped down in part because she believed she had the votes to appoint her handpicked successor. So she put together a counter slate, Black people, Black politicos in the Northwest Baltimore area, put together a counter slate of Black folks to get control, a majority of votes in the state central committee to prevent the slate funded by Howard Freeman from having power. And it was very close, but they basically believed they had the votes to be able to control who replaced her. So there was informally, there was a meeting of folks who were on Jill's slate. And again, Jill, to answer your question, and this is also something I think the left discounts, as a champion of social justice in Baltimore, in Maryland, Jill has been under constant attack by Fox 45, by Sinclair Media, not just Sinclair Media, but also the Democratic Party. Martin O'Malley just ran for Democratic National Committee chair. He launched vicious attacks on Jill Carter, right? And so again, someone like Jill, who is a champion, feels like she's just been subject to attack after attack from the Democratic Party and the right wing for years and years and years. And there's only so much of that you can take, right? So in the midst of that, she believes she had the votes to appoint her hand-picked successor, Delegate Malcolm Ruff. He's actually a civil rights lawyer that worked for Billy Murphy, the lawyer for Freddie Gray, someone who sues the city in incidences of police wrongdoing and other things like that. So with the votes she thought she had, she stepped down. And the goal was for Malcolm Ruff to replace her. And they thought they had the votes so much that no one else stepped up to ran. By the last moment, someone who represents Northwest Baltimore, again, generally a nice person, someone that we've worked with, but is tied to the Jewish Zionist tough on crime people, Dahlia Tarr stepped up, which was weird because I'm like, we got the votes, why she stepped up? And of course, when the vote happened, two of the people on Jill's slate actually flipped to vote for Dahlia Tarr at the last moment with no word whatsoever. And Dahlia Tarr is now the senator from Northwest Baltimore. And the person who flipped was not just anyone. It was someone from AFSCME, the public sector union rep. So if you don't know, AFSCME is the American Federation of State and County Municipal Employees, and they fight for strong collective bargaining rights to make sure teachers get their money, teachers get their pension, but they also support collective bargaining rights for the FOP. And right, and so AFSCME is seen as a fundamental ally of the left, someone who's fighting neoliberalism, putting money into the pockets of teachers. But at the moment where we actually needed it, this person, and again, we don't know if there was any deal cuts, but given the political forces at play, it would be naive to not at least mention these connections. Someone from AFSCME, an ally of the left, turns against a champion of social justice and supports Dahlia Tarr. So we actually don't have a Senate version of HB 836 because it was supposed to be Malcolm who was going to put that bill in. Because he was, not put in because this person from AFSCME flipped on them.
So real quick,
a strong example, because just to put the bow on it, the former head of AIPAC and his son orchestrated basically what one could call a political coup in Northwest Baltimore. And it's the Black politicos who are fighting to make sure that this person has political consequences. It's the Black politicos, many folks who many on this channel would critique as reformist and not revolutionary. They're plugged in enough to level consequences on her to be like, let's make sure she don't got no career in politics. Let's make sure she pays for that. And the left is totally silent because we're not paying attention to these levels of power with the specificity we need to be able to even notice it's happening.
So I appreciate that. One of the things that so I also watched the video, and there was something that I thought that would probably lead you into kind of responding to. It seemed like there was something insinuated, but are you saying that it's not that you disagree with what was said on the show, it's that they didn't go much deeper, and there's just a lot more to that discussion that you felt that they failed to address? Is that what you said?
I would say that it's a question not just of going deep, but where do we go deep? And what is the value of going deep in what areas of politics? Because what I perceive is that many times on the left, and again, we've said this about academics, we said this about folks in movement for Black lives, so it's not just specific to anyone or any particular person. There is a script, there is a narrative that, global capitalism, international politics, fight for the people. And that's going to lead us to certain frames of politics. Again, multiracial coalitions, proletariat, class-based analysis. All of these things create a sense of moral certainty, but also create a vision of friends and enemies that I think was reflected in that conversation that I think is problematic and very limited. And that's why I brought up that specific example of Northeast Baltimore, because you would think it would be a Black contractor. You would think it'd be a Black capitalist. You would think it would be someone like that would betray Malcolm, but it wasn't. It was someone from the public sector unions who, the past 5 years, many people, Black people on the left, have joined this call to strengthen unions, support unions, power to the proletariat. And the reality is that if we as Black people need to engage the masses of Black people who are plugged into these civic containers of Black civil society that many people think is small ball politics, that many people think is, just a bunch of people in suits trying to be important. But again, look, we do not have a Senate bill for this police accountability board legislation because Malcolm did not get that seat. So if you were serious,
and there's no other senator, there's no other option.
Well, that's the thing, is these things take months and months of planning, and all those months and months of planning were done assuming that Malcolm would get the seat, right? And even knowing the nuances of who gets appointed to what committee, because they even wanted to kick Malcolm off the Judicial Proceedings Committee if he had gotten that seat, because they basically didn't want him to be the next Jill. Right. And again, just knowing stuff like that, knowing the mechanics of how stuff actually passes. If you're serious about this stuff, and again, I know we're emotionally serious about wanting our people to have better lives, but if we are serious about understanding the levers of power that can materially change conditions for people, we have to take this stuff seriously. Because one of the things that I would think is abolitionist and materialist, we would understand that it's hiring and firing, whether a cop can feed their family and keep their job, which is a huge deterrent as to whether they will commit an act of police brutality or not. But it's been hard even to get things like the LEOBR and labor law in terms of police hiring and firing to be centered in police community control conversations, because it is so abstract. And there's also this subtext where it's like, I don't want to say that unions are too bad, because if we undermine collective bargaining for police, is that going to impact collective bargaining for teachers? Or at least that's what AFSCME definitely said when we started pushing this stuff in 2016 and 17, right? And again, and these might be your friends, these may be folks that you work with, these may be folks that you're personally connected to, but these are the tough conversations that I think, because the unions are seen as our friends, we don't want to center that, and because it's just not as cathartic as let's lock them up and throw them in jail. It's like, I thought we was abolitionists, right?
Well, the idea of unions is a friend. The idea of unionization should be a friend to working people and decent people's, concepts of the universe. But obviously, when we're talking about the FOP, when we're talking about, like the NFLPA, like when we're talking about some of these formations, that's not really the kind of unionization we're talking about. And as I was going to say, even when we're talking about even entities like AFSCME or anyone else, if in certain areas they are appropriate, they deserve praise and support. And if other areas, if they're supporting Zionism and the FOP, they need to be called out. So I just wanted to throw that idea, because again, this, to what I heard both of you saying, that this will be turned into something down the line where somebody who thinks they're involved in some good work will take a stance against even the idea of unions.
So Lawrence, real quick too, and I'm about to head out, but so I left this actually out of my question because I heard you say the left a few times. Like, are you like distancing yourself from the left, or are you just saying like we on the left?
I'm saying that there are objectives, and then there are communities and cultures of political analysis and movement built around those objectives. So as an objective, we are deeply in line with the objectives of the left. But the American left, as we know, is very weak. And the question is, how do we strengthen it? So I think some people feel like the way to strengthen it is to, again, have this fundamental criticism of all Black elected officials as representatives of capitalism, a fundamental criticism that's internationalist and proletariat and class-based, that's going to lead us to things like, multiracial coalitions, internationalist analysis. We're going to do political education around the connections of capitalism and internationalism, and all that's cool. What's missing from that theory of strengthening the left, which I think LBS for our past 15 years has been central on, is deep engagements with the portions of Black civil society that do not match the culture of the left. They don't talk about internationalism. They don't talk about anti-capitalism, but they have an interest in the objectives of the left. So there are a lot of people who just don't want cops to beat up their kids, but wouldn't call themselves a socialist or know who Kwame Nkrumah is and things like that. And if you're serious about moving policy, you're trying to figure out, how do I get those folks who have a particular strategic interest convergence within Black civil society? We talk about interest convergence between Derek Bell, white folk, and Black folk. We don't talk about interest convergence within Black civil society. Maybe they're not on board for everything, but they're on board with specific pieces of a leftist agenda we can deliver concretely and materially in the short intermediate term to protect our people in ways they see and feel that will build support for them to be willing to be conscientized and engage with larger leftist agendas, right? So I think the work we've done around the Baltimore City Children and Youth Fund, the work we're doing with reparations, getting money to community-based institutions that actually do conflict mediation and prevention upstream. A lot of people who don't care about nothing say, I know those people stop shootings. And if you're talking about getting more money to them materially, then I'm with it. And then, so if you're talking, if we got tax cannabis to do that, if we got tax corporations to do that, I'll listen. So these are folks that, may call themselves capitalists. But it's like, if you're talking about taxing rich people so that the people who I know can mediate these conflicts and stop shootings can get the money they need, then I'm with it. So I think sometimes there's a tendency amongst parts of the Black left to homogenize Black civil society as capitalist, reactionary, in ways that just don't match the political reality and limit our ability to see meaningful political interventions in the political landscape. And I think if we've had any success over the past 15 years at LBS, it's been willing to engage with folks that, again, other people would see as not worth engaging in ways that actually get them to support progressive policies because they see it as in their interest. And if we as the left take a too simplistic analysis, even something like, again, defund the police, like in my mind, that fall's been co-opted in many ways to say we need to support public health, nonprofit approaches to basically human social service interventions, which basically decenter the Black grassroots organizations that many people in community feel are doing the real work. So even when the left tries to respond in ways that are meaningful to try to respond to people's needs to like stop the shootings, that's hooking up with like people Bloomberg funds and Bloomberg controls. And we know Bloomberg is the person who did the Hopkins police force. We did all that tweeting, and I was part of it. All the consciousness raising, all the battling to stop the Hopkins police force. Bloomberg went to Annapolis one day, and the day after he left, they said, we're doing the Hopkins police force, right? So political education is important, but building with the people that can put pressure in places like Annapolis. So when a Bloomberg shows up, we have a coalition across Black civil society and the parts of the multiracial left that are willing to come with us to push back against someone like Bloomberg. Right now, the way that so many people move, and I feel that conversation we've had earlier this week, we're going to, again, like, the people who are in the sort of leftist, internationalist, anti-capitalist spaces, and we're leaving so much of not just Black, but just civil society in general off the map, and we can't push back when the people we call our allies turn on us on critical questions.
I do want to ask a clarifying question. So when you were saying these things take months and months of planning, you're talking about the bill or just the lobbying for the bill?
Well, who's going to carry the bill? What else are they carrying? Because, we had one senator that's like, look, I'm carrying this other really important bill. There's going to be so many conversations and hearings for that bill. I can't do both. And so I'm with it. I'm going to vote for it, but I can't be the lead sponsor. I can't whip the votes. I can't work behind the scenes for it. So it's like, okay, well, if Antonio Hayes can't carry the bill for that, then I got to go to somebody else. And it's like, it's just all of these different nuances.
I understand that part. I mean, this is what I do for a living. I literally just filed my bills with our state house the other day ahead of the bill filing deadline. So I understand the process of like lobbying for them. I was just more so asking for context for people who are watching and also for folks who don't normally do policy stuff. Because sometimes some of the stuff you're saying, I think it needed a little bit of an explanation added in there.
Yeah, and again, part of it again is like we don't have the time to do the full explanation, and I'm not here to do the full explanation. I'm here to raise to the audience of this show that there is an entire landscape of analysis, and maybe we haven't taken this seriously because there's another landscape that is more fun, that is more media friendly, that's more social media friendly, and so being willing to understand, we do civics trainings and civic education where we break down this stuff, pretty consistently. But many on the left, it's like, well, what about Sudan? What about Congo? And like all that stuff is important. But we've left, I think, a lot of the muscles for engaging in public conversations about moving policy, especially at a state level. Because, what people know is like, the mayor ain't nothing, city council ain't nothing, president ain't nothing. But even like knowing enough people in the state house to know who ain't nothing and who is something, like that's hard. That's just not easy to do, but it's so important. So I think in general, I would say at the very least, a more detailed and specific analysis of state policy Every time Trump get elected, it's like, well, we got to go to the states now. And then you start looking at state governments like, well, that's complicated. Let me go back.
I can understand that though, because I do find that like a lot of the more larger orgs do censor a lot of things internationally, and I think they should be censored, but I do think that the real impact you make is local. Like I passed 6 ordinances last year. I got 2 bills up in the state house this year, and 1 ordinance right now being heard in our local city council. And I do that all the time, and I help other people do it, and I've seen the real impact of that. So I agree that, we should be adding more of that political analysis and explanation for folks who want to do those types of things where they live, and also still talking about what's happening internationally and doing advocacy that place. But I also do think there should be more of a center focus locally, because I do see the impact quicker. And I think a lot of the apathy people have is from not feeling or seeing a difference in something. And when you're focusing on more local wins, then they are able to feel and see that, and it helps them like sustain that organizing longer.
Yeah. And for example, I'm going to say one thing as a meta-analysis frame, and then I'm going to say one specific point to what you said. I'm not saying any of these things are perfect. In fact, 2016 bill, 2021 bill, one of the biggest critics of them was us, because the Democratic Party wanted to claim them as like, we did it for Black people. This is our big thing for Black people. And it was like, it's better than nothing. But let's have a conversation about what's actually within the bill, what's not in the bill. Like, we didn't really even support the way they did police accountability boards. That's part of why we're supporting legislation to make them better. Mm-hmm. So if folks want to have a intelligent criticism of any of this stuff, that's great. Part of what I'm saying is even to center this stuff as a space to have criticism, to know enough about what happened to even have criticisms of folks on the left to say that felt like the Democratic Party doing that BS. I think that's perfect. Like, let's have that conversation, but let's have the conversation. Let's know enough and take it seriously enough to have a conversation. What do you think about the 2021 police reform bill? Like, what are the good parts? What are the bad parts? And I would love for this space to be part of the space where we as the left begin to have those conversations and build strategy. Because it's not to say that any strategy is perfect, but to at least know this is a space where we have to have strategy and not just, it's just Black people selling us out. Now, and to what you just said more specifically, even building the connection to the internationalist framework, I think going through the local lens is how we get more people engaged in that. Because again, like, we've been very critical of the stuff that Zionists and Israel has been doing, and we've taken hits for that. And even me saying what I said the way I said it is like, will be controversial in some ways. But for example, the people who are running the Safe Street sites in Baltimore, LifeBridge Health, they are part of the American Israeli Development Corporation, which is like an entity which basically connects businesses from Maryland to Israel to do like business exchanges between Maryland and Israel. So we have the people that's supposed to be alternatives to policing, that's supposed to be part of what many people think is, again, defund the police, fund public health, LifeBridge Health, which runs our Safe Street sites. Because again, Israel has a ton of health tech. It's not just military contractors. So if you want folks to care about Israel, be like, hey, LifeBridge do some good stuff, State Street do some good stuff. Wouldn't it be better if they weren't tied to an institution that's institutionally connected to a Zionist regime? Might that impact the ability of something like our community alternatives to policing to reflect a radical, community-based, anti-racist perspective that many of us feel not only will be important, but also necessary to be effective to stop the shootings in our streets? Like, what do we think about the linkages between community safety and the nonprofit industrial complex, and specifically LifeBridge and the Maryland Israeli Development Corporation? So I'm saying let's do more of that and less just generic Israel bad. Because because now it's like, oh, so that my friend worked for them. So you're telling me he got to work for somebody connected to them and they doing that crazy stuff? Like, there's just so much we're leaving on the table because we've not had the nuance and specificity to put this stuff up for our community, to engage people, to see the connections that we see.
And I think we're seeing a lot of that now, like where people are realizing their power and they are taking it back and doing more. There's a question in the private chat that I want to ask you that Rashim had. She said, Grand Prix, would you say that it's better for the city to have authority to make decisions about local issues like zoning, public services, law enforcement, and education policies without significant interference from higher levels of government? Or are you saying it makes little to no difference?
I'm saying that the bill that was passed does not, to my mind, meaningfully clarify how that changes post that ordinance passing. The one thing that would change is, again, this thing in the Constitution about the city council can make no bill constraining the police chief. but the police chief is still appointed by the mayor. The mayor still controls the budget. And if you don't have a nuanced and specific understanding of how city council runs, having the city council have impact on policing, that can easily go the other way. And in fact, I think if we as the left don't build the muscle I'm talking about, it will more likely go the other way, where city council people will come, like Yitzi Schleifer, who represents the northwest portion of Baltimore City, that also Wadalia Attar represents, and say, hey, the police are saying they can't do their job. We as city council gotta give them more power. We as city council gotta give them more money. And if we're not plugged in and building the muscle to not just push back, but to actually operationalize governance at state and local level, then having local control of policing can easily do the exact opposite of what the intent is, right? And I think that's the point I'm trying to make more than anything else.
I think it's also important to talk about the structure of, like, how you said you have a very weak city council, because so many local governments are very different. We actually have we have a strong mayor, weak council makeup here in Memphis, but we also have a majority where most folks are voting very progressively. So it kind of balances itself out. And it sounds like y'all city council is way weaker than ours.
Yeah,
they do.
It's a question of, like, the National Conference of Mayors will sometimes be in Baltimore. And part of that is I feel like they're jealous of the Baltimore mayor. The Baltimore mayor is one of the strongest in the country. So again, even the idea of having city council be a check, it's like, not just statutorily city council powers, but functionally, like, go to city council, talk to them, see how they move. They are so understaffed. They are so overwhelmed. They are basically glorified constituent services representatives. So most of the city council people do is they fill potholes. They fix streetlights. They deal with, like, I had a fox run around my house. It's like, well, that fox might have rabies. I gotta call a city council person. They do stuff like that. So
Foxes have rabies?
Well, I'm just saying, I'm in the city, it's a fox. Foxes can get rabies. I'm just saying stuff like that.
Okay.
That's more of what they do than, like, deep, serious policy thinking. So it's completely legitimate to critique them. It's like, I don't know if I want to work with them. They may not be serious. Maybe I got to put my energy elsewhere. That's fine. But even to know enough to make that determination and seriously build an alternative space of power to influence state and local policy. Or, some things we do is, like, we get that you don't have the capacity. We'll just do it. Like, help us do it, but we'll do a lot of the heavy lifting. So we talk about the youth fund, talk about the reparations of the war on drugs. Like, we know the city council is under capacity. That's actually an opportunity for us as a community to do it. But sometimes, and again, I think this is also back to the core point, we as the left is like, y'all should do it. I'm telling you to do it. And that's like, I don't know how. I can't. That's not me being on no ideological, neoliberal, whatever. I just don't know how, and I can't do it. So it's like, are we going to step up and do it, right? And I think that, again, takes a seriousness to learning about the nuances of wielding power locally, and, like, what they can do, what they can't do, in a way that, again, people critique it sometimes as being too into the system, because that's part of what we do. And for us, it's like, like you said, Jared, like, the bank robber, why do you rob banks? That's where the money is, right? If that's where the money and the power is, we've made a determination that that's a skill that we're willing to try to build collectively, not just us, but collectively. Like, look at our reparations commission, like, a lot of powerful people on that commission that don't always see the same way, but we are committed to working with them to build the capacity where they can put up to, right now they have $20 million under local control. The commission controls that money from the taxation of cannabis. And so what is the institutional infrastructure we have to build to get that money to the ground? We got to do it, because we know city council, even if they want to, they got a couple staff. Yeah. They get yelled at over so much stuff. We got to do it. And I think so much to the left, it's like, we got to yell at them and make them do it. It's like, we got to do it.
Yeah, I find that strategy works the best. Like, when we wanted funding here in our budget for the more budget for, like, youth and stuff, I said, hey, we can write the resolution, and we actually have a nonprofit here that does youth economic development. They can take over the contract. You actually don't have to do anything. And they went for that, because when you're offering them resources to take something on, they try to give you the money. They're way more willing to do it. And now we can get that expanded year after year after year in the budget. But we just have to get the end step to get in there in the first place, because our city council is very understaffed too. They do make more money, like the staff makes more money. The council members don't. They make like $19,000 or something. But the staff members do make pretty good money, but they don't have a lot of them. There's only one city council member who actually does the job like full time because she's retired. The rest of them all have regular jobs. So it does make it harder, and, like, the outreach and stuff. But I do see a huge difference in, hey, I wrote this legislation, I wrote this ordinance. Can you run this ordinance? And then they'll just do it because they know they don't have the time to write it, but they do agree with the issue. Or when we're doing budget stuff, like, hey, I need you to fund this thing because you said you care about this issue. We got a group right here that's already doing this work. Like our official bill in Memphis chapter was already doing youth mental health and paying for therapists and getting them to therapy. But we need more funding. So giving us more funding to make sure we can reach more kids, yeah, you're down to do that.
And it's not always ideological. Because that's one of the biggest things that I think I've realized over the past 10 years is that as someone who came to political consciousness, in my early 20s, like looking at the political results we get, it's like what is it? Like it's got to be some deep animus that's driving the results we get. And sometimes it's that. Like I think some of the bills we see criminalizing Black youth are deep animus, racialized animus towards our youth. But like when you have a pot of money and it doesn't go where you want it to go, it's like they just didn't know who to give it to. Or it's like we scared that we give the money to small grassroots organizations, they're going to mess the money up and somebody's going to go to jail and I'm going to get accused of being corrupt. But
I
it's
see that happen more of like we just have money left over and nobody. I was talking to our mayor about this because we have a grant program here and people are applying for the grant, but they're all asking for $1 million. So then no one ends up getting the grant because they all ask for $1 million. The grant is only has an allotment for $3 million. But if you had asked for what you really needed, which is 5 or 10, they would have gave them that. And I think also doing the education around that, like, hey, stop asking for more than you need because you've never like had to ask before. So they say the max is $1 million, so you just apply for the max because then you don't get anything. And so now they have all this surplus grant funds that the council members might just give to their favorite org. Like I've seen them do that before where they like, oh, we have 50,000 left over. Let's just give it to the Orpheum or give it to the opera, like whatever org is in that district that they know about, because the people who really do need the money asked for way too much money on the grant or they didn't apply at all. And now you have all these funds that could be used for good things, but people overshot their ask or just, didn't even put it out there. So I agree with that too. Like there has to be a lot more push for people to like, hey, what do you need? Do you need help writing a grant? Like what you need us to do? And also don't ask for more than you need because these people are saying we can give you the money if you need 50K, but we can't give you $1 million.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's all really good. So I'm just trying to bring it back to policing. I mean, I heard someone say that like these, and again, we talk about it all the time. And part of it is really frustrating. The left is not as enthused or plugged into what's happening as we are. Like we have a podcast coming out next month. Violence is declining nationwide, all over the country, 20-30% in major cities. And the question is why? And it's our contention that, racism, poverty is a huge structural driver of violence. But when it comes to what can actually move the needle short, intermediate term, is these community-based violence prevention, conflict mediation institutions that are plugged into the communities experiencing these shootings. And I heard someone describe it as a civil rights movement of our times, like giving these people money, building the capacity so they can basically be the entity that produces safety in our community. I think it's actually might be more the Black Power movement of our time, because these are folks that are tied into, the Nation of Islam. These are folks that are tied into spiritual institutions. I was at a community food giveaway and, just giving away literally tons of food, like moving pallets of frozen turkeys, but they're talking to the youth that may be system engaged. And they're like, look, this is like the African tribe. And we got to basically come together the way African tribes did to feed our community the way they did. So that's like a specific cultural technology that's stopping violence all over the country. And we're seeing not only Trump come for them, we're seeing the nonprofit industrial complex and the public health people come for them to basically say, we don't believe that cultural stuff is working. Y'all got to do cognitive behavioral therapy. And y'all got to run your program under us. And we got to take a cut. We got to control it. And it's like just the amount of power and base building it would do to build support for policing reform. To say, we're going to put pressure on the city council, but put pressure to give money to these community-based institutions that we in the community know are stopping the shootings. And not just from Trump, but against the Hopkinses of the world, against the Bloombergs of the world that want to completely control this multi-billion-dollar industry. And to see the left basically, again, be like, defund the police, fund public health. I'm like, no, public health is the problem. They're the people who are against our people controlling that money. And it's like you just have to have more rigor and precision when you talk about this stuff, and to not see it happening while we're building $1 billion industry that could replace policing potentially. Like, if you want the space to do police reform, you get the murders and shootings down. And we have a specific cultural technology that can do that, that's proving it can do that. So now more than ever, we need a broad-based multiracial coalition willing to stand up to the nonprofit industrial complex and Trump and the public health people that says we will not allow you to defund what is keeping our community safe and alive. And the lack of precision around leftists picking strategic intervention points like that, because that's community control of public safety. Like, we can fight the police, we can stop them from doing bad stuff. When it comes to community control of public safety, a demand from the Black radical tradition for centuries, this is a huge opportunity to do that. But it just isn't the enthusiasm. There isn't the energy and the focus and the consistency, so that when Hopkins comes and says that LifeBridge comes with their ties to the Maryland Israeli Development Corporation, it's like, we would love to see people more plugged into stuff like that. And if we're just so pleased with things like the ordinance passing for local control, we're not going to do that.
I just want to say, we were talking about how Lawrence wasn't talking, and now he ain't shut up. So we got him going.
Lawrence isn't quiet. My humble estimation is Lawrence is not quiet out of being shy or some, it's targeted, just like you hear with his analysis, it's targeted commentary. It's like, I'm just to be talking. Lawrence, listen, we only have a few more minutes this morning. Definitely, first of all, want to encourage people to continue to link up with LBS and their work. To definitely link up with the Search for Black Power podcast that airs here. To definitely link up with the LBS YouTube channel, where more happens. There's just a lot that you all are doing, but I if I can just sort of summarize what I think I understand, part of what you're saying here this morning is that. Well, let me ask, I'll just put it in a frame. I'll phrase it as a question, because I know some of what you and LBS have is your actual politics, your actual worldview, which overlaps much more closely with segments of this broad, ill-defined left than might appear when people hear you talking in terms of multiracial coalitions and public policy. And I hear that grassroots radical in me, so I'm assuming I hear it in I'm assuming others feel kind of, what does this have to do with our sovereignty, our liberation? We want to destroy this place. We're not trying to reform. We're not trying to, we want national sovereignty and liberation, and and then they hear you saying, but we have to take these very targeted steps. We have to work with some other communities. We have to work with people in our community that we may or may not, If you could just sort of put a bow on sort of that approach that I hear you summarize, or not summarize, but giving some detail to, what do you say to folks like that? Yeah.
The question is, how do we evaluate Black radical tradition and history to find strategies that are effective? So part of the reason I talked about Jill Carter, I talked about Walter Carter, is the legacy of like community control of the poverty programs that were done in the 60s and 70s. Many people critique them as reformist, right? But when it comes to talking to people in Baltimore who experienced them, they said Baltimore and Walter Carter put a specific focus on community control, and people experienced those programs as a degree of sovereignty. So the reality is white supremacy took hundreds of years to build. It may take hundreds of years to destroy. I mean, global warming may kill us all. We don't know, right? But the point is, no matter what happens, do we have the institutional infrastructure to practice sovereignty, protect it, and defend it? So when we talk about building things like the Baltimore City Children and Youth Fund or the Reparations Fund, that's money in a perpetuity. That's political infrastructure. I call it political artillery, right? And so they're not just going to give you artillery. Lawrence of Arabia, we can't give them artillery. We give them artillery, we make them independent because they can use it on us, right? And the British talking to the Arabs, right? They're not just going to give you artillery, but you have to figure out what you can do to build it and defend it and control it to the best of your ability. Because if you do not have durable institutional containers to practice sovereignty, then we're just going to be waiting for, the $1 trillion reparations bill to fall from the federal government. We're going to be waiting for another big investment of federal money, like with the pandemic. We're just going to be going from potential jubilee to potential jubilee without building the institutional infrastructure to continuously have nodes that we control that are meeting people's needs. Because part of it also is an organizing strategy. When people get money from the youth fund, they say, oh, that Pan-African stuff by LBF is not just talk, they actually delivering. So maybe I should listen to them when they talk about taxing rich people to put it in the reparations fund. But when I'm talking about taxing the rich people in the state of Maryland, I'm talking about billions of dollars, $60 billion budget in Maryland. And I'm talking, but if we want $100 million, where do we put it? Where do we put it that's not just going to be a feeding trough for the nonprofit industrial complex? Where are we going to put it in a way that we actually control it? And I'm like, okay, so we're going to try to build like the reparations commissions as a space to hold money. And right now they're holding 20 million. But if we get the taxation bill the way we want it, they can hold 50, 100 million. And then you start actually having sovereignty at scale. Because sovereignty is a feeling, sovereignty is emotion, but to actually experience sovereignty in the world, you have to have institutions that can implement sovereign policy at scale. And, got started 1 million, but 5 million, 10 million, 100 million. Like, that's the work it's going to take. And that work isn't always fun, it isn't sexy, it isn't always easily figuring out how to get it remunerated, because foundations don't fund it too easily. When it comes to actually practicing sovereignty, and Davon talks about all the time, John Henrik Clarke, sort of like nation building. We need to have institutional nation building knowledge and practice and culture, which again is influenced by the newly independent nations from the African continent. So it's like, well, if your money's being printed by France, then just because you have flag and anthem doesn't make you sovereign, right? So to the extent that we can here in America, as a colonial colony built on white supremacy, we need to use the vote and ability to control local and state politics to build containers to implement sovereign decision-making and be able to build institutions that reflect people's desires. I mean, that's how these violence prevention people got funded, because there was just so much pressure from the grassroots. It's like, you can't just give it to the white saviors. You gotta also give it to these Black grassroots organizations. But that was a lot of federal money. That federal money is about to leave, not just from Trump, but just it was pandemic money. Now it's gone. So how are we going to replace it? Because we cannot allow these people doing this critical work not to do that work. So we don't have a choice. We have to figure out how to replace it, which means whether it's state money, whether it's taxing the nonprofits like Hopkins to get the money, whether it's money from the cannabis fund, like we have to do stuff like that. And we can't allow, again, just like a federal jubilee, like we got with the ARPA money, the federal money from the pandemic, critical institutions of our society be dependent upon occasionally our interests converging with that of the federal government, with Kamala Harris, with Donald Trump, or whoever, right? So I think that's what we're trying to explain to folks and get the left more engaged and enthused, not just about destroying the Maryland Valley Development Corporation, which I think, is legitimate to critique it, but to build something in its place, to build the institutional containers for housing policy, housing cooperatives. Where's the money going to come from? How do we get it to the ground? What do we build? How do we keep that community controlled? These aren't easy questions. My point is we have to, as a left, ask them and take them seriously. And I think that's what's been missing.
I really appreciate the breakdown. I think that I love hearing people who talk about like how important the focus is on local policy, because that's my niche and my bag around organizing. And I agree about the ARPA funds. Like, I saw they were going to be drying up last year, which is why we started pushing so hard on the more budget to make sure that we had stuff funded.
Exactly. I really appreciate you, because this is a conversation that we love to have. And again, it's not that we have all the answers. It's that we just have to think seriously about these asked questions to center. Wilderson, the power to pose the question is the most important power of all. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to have the power to pose the question around how do we seriously engage these levels of power.
Lawrence, big thanks. I really appreciate you coming through. I, of course, appreciate you reaching out and wanting to continue a conversation that began the other day and extend it. I think this is what these spaces need. So big shout out to you. Big shout out to Professor Rashim as well.
I mean, just do like the 1 minute wrap up.
Go ahead. Yeah,
check
please.
us out, lbsbaltimore.com. We're not a nonprofit. Made a very intentional decision to not be a nonprofit. So if you're able to, our political advocacy is powered by people who give us, small amounts of money every month, so we can actually engage in these issues. Go to lbsbaltimore.com/sustain. As you might know, we have a podcast, In Search of Black Power. We're actually going to do an episode in April about the academic analysis of the uprising, because it's a 10-year anniversary and what they missed. So you can keep up on all that. Please sign up for our email listserv, because we're giving you a lot of updates about what we're doing in Annapolis. They are trying to criminalize our youth in Annapolis. We're fighting to stop youth being charged automatically as adults. And that's really important. So if you want to keep up to date on all that, we're asking people to contact their legislators and get engaged. Go to lbsbaltimore.com, sign up for the emails, because to conclude, we're also had the first meeting of the Baltimore City Reparations Commission that's going to be impaneled to actually decide where the money from progressive cannabis taxation goes to address the harms of the war on drugs. So if you want to be engaged in that process, or, you know, many counties in Maryland have mirrored our Reparations Commission model, because they also get cannabis money too. We get the most because we had the most arrests. But if you're in PG, if you're in Howard County, if you're in Montgomery County, they also have commissions that are determining where their chunk of the cannabis money goes. So check in with us, but also check in with anyone you know in those counties, because you could serve on one of those commissions, or you could put pressure on your county council person to appoint the person you want on that commission. And I think that when we talk about sovereignty, we mean those are the levers we can really lean on and push to meaningfully determine where money goes in our community. So again, lbsbaltimore.com, follow us on social, Leaders of a Beautiful Struggle.
Well, Lawrence, I am definitely not only a longtime contributor and sustainer to LBS directly, but I am increasingly a longtime and continued sustained supporter of that taxation. My tax dollars, put them to work, Lawrence. I'm trusting you with LBS.
Or you do it yourself. I mean, again, like if you're in Howard County, you could be on the commission if they have the commission model, or you can lean on your county council person to appoint someone you like to make those decisions.
No, I want you to take, but I'm advocating, I want LBS to be in charge with my contributed cannabis tax revenue in the state of Maryland.
No, we can build it, but we're not going to control it. It's up for the people to control, and that's very important.
I'm the people. I want you.
Exactly.
No,
so you be on the commission, or you appoint someone.
I want you. That's
yeah.
All right, no, but big thanks to you and and everyone. Big shout out. I am right, and Yipper is reminding. I'm already on the village board here at Howard at Hickory Ridge Village Board, so I'm already such a heavy contributor to all of. No, listen, please, everybody, like, share, subscribe, support the platform. Please come back later for Darker Than Blue tonight. Saturdays with Renee, Warrior Class, Sundays with the Ear Doctor. I'll be doing a Saturday night live on my channel, Saturday night, tomorrow evening. And so all of that, ring the bell, support all of these things. Amber had to dip apparently. Lawrence, thank you very much. We'll get out of here.
Thank you, man.
Dr. Rasheem, thank you very much. Please come back as often as you can. We will definitely look forward to that. Amber, thank you for jumping back in here so we can say goodbye for the morning and the weekend. Peace, everybody. Only if you're willing to fight for it, like Fred Hampton used to say. And we'll see you next week with more Remix Morning Show right here on Black Liberation Media. Peace.